Hi, everyone. Today I'm with Audrey Holst, as you know, and we're going to be talking about perfectionism. Are you a perfectionist? Have you been a recovered perfectionist? Let's talk about that. So welcome, Audrey.
Thanks so much for having me, Kathi. I can't wait to talk.
I know this is going to be exciting. So, and let's not make it perfect, okay? So talk to me about how did you get on this quest for helping people alleviate their perfectionism tendencies?
Yeah.
Are you recovered?
It's a lifetime practice is what I would say. The perfectionist piece actually came later when I was in my coaching sort of journey. So when I first started working with clients, a lot of my clients were burning out. I had a lot of clients who were trying to make career changes because they were burning out. And so that was what I focused on for a long time, was this burnout aspect. And I have done a lot of research on burnout. I've done a lot of work with burned out folks. I'm actually on a burnout panel right now with other people who are working around burnout. But burnout, when I started digging into it and I started writing my book, I was like, burnout is it's like not my forte. Like, I know a lot about it. I've had a lot of experience with it, with people that have had it, but there's something else and there's something before. So when I started digging into like the commonalities of the people I really enjoyed working with, this perfectionism piece kept coming up over and over and over and over again. And so that's when I started to hone in. I was like, oh, this is what I want to work with, this perfectionism piece, because it's part of the body, it's part of the nervous system, it's part of the human experience, it's a survival technique, right? And that was like big into my background on the body and the nervous system and movement and yoga and meditation and all, like a holistic human being experience. And that's when I started to get really excited and really dug into the work that I do now.
That's exciting. So what did you come up with? So what do you think perfectionism starts with this, I guess, from when we're very, very young, or do we grow into it? What's your viewpoint on that?
Yeah. So I did a series of interviews with people who are self-proclaimed perfectionist. It was over 60 interviews with people who were like, hey, yes, I actually just reached out and I thought I'd get maybe a few people that were interested in talking with me about their perfectionism. And 60 folks later, within the span of like maybe 2 or 3 weeks of qualitative interviews, every single person that I talked to had some sort of origin point in when they were younger that they could point to say, oh yeah, perfectionism started here. And then what ends up happening, and so through my research and through my clients and through my work, to me, perfectionism is essentially a survival technique that people get wired into their system, and it brings them through. And there are certain things that nurture that and amplify it, and things that start to diffuse it. So some people, you can see how their lives start to diffuse it, how it starts to become less prevalent as they get older. And then other people, depending on maybe the work that they go into, for instance, I work with a lot of people that are in law, that really amplifies perfectionism. So there was not a single person that I talked to that was like, you know what? I hit age 30 and I thought, perfectionism sounds like something I haven't tried yet. Let me try that. Everybody had some sort of origin story about when they were little and had very clear memories of like some original pieces that they were like, yeah, that's where it started. I'm very clear on that.
That's so funny. Yeah, I'm taking a course right now on consciousness, and a lot of the stuff that happens with us happens, when we're 3 to 5 years old, and it just gets ingrained right there. And it's like, ooh, okay, yeah, better be perfect this time. And I love the fact that you differentiate, though, that people who get into the careers where you have to be by the law, so to speak, dot the I's, cross the T's, right? And in that type of business where you'd be scared into perfectionism, and especially if you didn't have that tendency to start out with, it'd be really very scary to think, oh, I could really screw this one up.
Totally. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so what are the things that can help diffuse perfectionism? If anybody out there is struggling with this, which I know a lot of you are because you're my tribe, what are some of your tips, Audrey, that you could diffuse the perfectionism instinct?
The first thing is just starting to notice, just noticing that it is an aspect of your experience day to day, starting to figure out what some of the, so-called signs and symptoms of perfectionism could be, because this is another conversation I have with people where they'll say, well, I'm not a perfectionist because I'm not perfect enough to be a perfectionist. And it shows up different ways for different people. I've identified 5 archetypes that people fall into, that categories that people fall into in terms of perfectionism. So, some people will say, well, my desk is a mess. And it's like, well, that's okay. That doesn't mean that you're not, but they're dealing with all of these other things, how they're showing up in a particular way and their levels of procrastination around not doing things because they want to do it either like 3,000,000% the right, better than everybody else, or they're not going to do it at all, right? This sort of all or nothing kind of thinking, this survival behavior. So once people start to notice it, that's the first piece, because they want to fix it. But like, first you just got to kind of look around, like observe it, just kind of see what you're dealing with. And because of my understanding and my work with perfectionism, seeing it as being wired within the body, a lot of the work that we start doing is just noticing the environment, noticing our physicality, starting to understand that there is this whole world inside of us that's always communicating with us. But perfectionism starts to put these very weird lenses on what our body communicates to us. And it starts to create these interpretations, meaning making, right? Our body, we start to think, oh, well, this feeling means this about me, or this sensation means this about me. And so starting to get people more plugged into like what it is to be them and how it feels to be them, and starting to pull apart some of that, the meaning making, we call that noticing and discernment in the Fortitude and Flow process. That's a huge start to like untangling and rewiring some of these things.
That's really, really interesting. I find there's a lot of trigger points for people. Yeah, I think that's spot on. So, talk to me about how you handle your week. So as someone who, who works with people who somehow have I have clients that they won't, unless he can do it absolutely perfectly, they don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. How would you have, instead of how do you handle your week, how do you have them handle their week? Like as far as their flow of their work, business processes? Yeah.
It's a very, when I'm working one-on-one with people, it's a very individual process. It's kind of like figuring out, okay, where do they have space? Where do they not have space? Where do they have to do, their deepest work? A lot of people will try to get some of that deeper stuff done like first thing in the morning before they dive into their day, because once things get going, it's very difficult to create that space for that deeper work. Figuring out how people's energy goes. Some people have more energy in the afternoon. Some people have more energy in the evening, figuring that out, figuring out the things that really create stress in them, and figuring out, are there ways to mitigate this? Are there tools? Are there, technologies? Sometimes people will try to like willpower their way, and we'll just be like, hey, listen, there's a tool for that. We don't need to I don't believe in willpower. I think it's BS. I don't like that at all. So we always find ways to like work with how somebody is built. And anytime we make change, it has to be small, doable, and experimental and sustainable. That is the best way that I found, especially when we're changing things that are in the body, to like get it on board and keep it going in a positive way.
I love that. Small, doable, and implementable. You're talking my talk right there. If people don't see the path to do it in step 1, 2, 3, again, then especially if you're talking with perfectionists and they're like, wait a minute, I need to know step 1, 1 point A, 1 point B, 1 point C. Then you can talk to me about 2.
Right. And they're like, but what if 2 doesn't work? Then we have to talk about plan A, B, and C that we might do instead, because the first one didn't work. And that's why nothing happens, because they've already made 15 different plans when the first one goes, in their mind, doesn't work.
Yeah, that's exactly why I ask you about the calendaring, because I do time management a lot, and you run up against that. And I love the way that you also said, the biological clock, like I could never do a big project first thing in the morning. Forget about that stuff. I'm like a 3 to 5 big project person, and we're all different. So, we need to give ourselves latitude to create our schedule based on our biorhythm. And so it sounds like you feel like perfectionism is also kind of a chemical reaction within ourselves. That's something that can be changed. Can you talk a little bit further about that?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of research done, and a lot of the stuff that I like to talk about is the neuroscience around Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett's work. And she will talk about, you know, the brain makes meaning. Let me back this up.
Okay.
If we think about things as our body as trying to be as efficient as possible, right? Our body wants to be really efficient. It doesn't want to use, it has limited resources, right? As much as we'd like to think of ourselves as robots that we are just plugged into a wall, we can do anything we want to do. The reality is we have limited resources. We have limited energy. We're going to have to sleep at some point. We're going to have to eat at some point. We're going to have to drink water at some point. There are things that our body needs in order for us to keep going. So the thing that's important to understand is that the body wants to be efficient, which means these habits that we have wired into us are efficient habits. They may not be the thing that we want, right? Even the way we have reactions to stuff, feeling guilty, right? People who get into these like little things of guilt, when I start to talk to people about starting to take time, oh, but I feel guilty. Guilt is actually an efficiency response. Your body has gone at some point, it's efficient here to be guilty. So this is the association. A plus B equals C. Here's the guilt. Boom, that's efficiency. So starting to get people to understand a lot of this stuff is literally just habit that the brain and the body have put together. It doesn't mean anything. It's not meaning making, right? We don't have to make meaning. We don't have to put concepts on top of it. So let's break it down to its basic thing where the body has decided, okay, this particular association. So one of the things that perfectionists experience a lot more than the typical population is chronic stress, because they have these associations, these stressors. What ends up happening with chronic stress is you end up having cortisol, which we talk about it as a stress hormone. What it really is an energy hormone firing because your body thinks, oh, last time this thing happened, we needed extra energy. So now your body is firing off this hormone in places that it doesn't need to, right? And that creates negative effects over time. So this is where like starting to become a little bit more conscious of these, efficiencies the body has built in, and starting to, in the beginning, being a little bit less efficient because it's going to be uncomfortable. We're going to start to make changes, but over time, rewiring that so that, oh, okay, now your body has a new association. That becomes the efficient thing. And now we're not firing off cortisol in places where we don't need to.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, because I truly believe that a belief is only a thought that you keep thinking. So, whatever your reaction is something that's just been built into you over and over and over, and it's something you can change for sure. And I like your idea of, you can't willpower into anything either, which is so true. Like a lot of people try to willpower into everything, and it's not water over rock. It's not going downstream. It's way not even going with the flow. You're just like, I can power through this because I can do anything, and it's going to be perfect, and it's going to get done. Whoa,
and that's the mentality, right? And there's pride. I can work harder than anybody else. I can push through. I can be the one that takes it on. And that attitude creates impact over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of dis-ease happens for sure with that. Yeah. So talk to me about one of your clients. When you think about your work, what's the story that makes you the happiest of something you can think of that happened?
So I had a client that when we started working together, really would go through some rough periods, especially like when the winter started. So they had like these associations of stress in the winter time, and that was something we were aware of. And they had a therapist and all that sort of stuff. It was nothing where I was overstepping my boundaries as a coach. And I remember having these sessions, and this client was really good at just like implementing, right? Like we would go over a practice and they would just really just dig their teeth into it and just go with it. And I remember we had talked about kind of what we just talked about there, where they said, oh, I've been feeling this particular way. And it kind of sent them down a rabbit hole, like this negative rabbit hole. Like I felt this way, and then I was trying to figure it out, and I like was super stressed, and I couldn't figure out what, how to get out of it. And there was this whole like narrative around it. And I was like, hold up, let's back up. like, what happened? Because you didn't just randomly wake up one day and all of a sudden everything went sideways. And so we kind of like backed it up to its origin point. And then I was like, oh, and we basically went step by step to be like, well, this is what your body did, right? This happened. And then your body did this. And now your body has this association with, when I feel this way, it means this. I said, that's all. Your body is just making meaning of this thing. And they were like, oh my gosh. And it was like a light bulb went off. And after like having that little breakdown of, not like, oh my gosh, there's something really wrong with you that we need to like, that we have to dig into your childhood story. No, we didn't have to dig into anything. I just had to be like, this is what your body is doing. And this is why your body is doing it. Isn't that amazing? Doesn't that make so much sense? And they like, bam. And it is amazing, how different and how well they've not only taken care of themselves, but the teams that they work on are like extremely well taken care of, because they now know what it's like to be in them. They can see it in other people, and they are working with their teams as human beings. So that was like extremely gratifying for me.
What fun, what fun, what fun. So when these things happen, I'm on a big success kick right now in celebrations. How do you celebrate your successes? Like, that's a huge win to have someone's life completely shift, under your guidance. What do you do to celebrate? I'm asking everybody this because it's the year of celebration.
I love that. I think it's such a great question. It's something that I, obviously celebrating with a client celebrating in company is the best, right? Like, celebrating by myself it's not really it. I would like to say, yes, Kathi, I like pour myself I grab a bottle of champagne and like, have a part. No, I mostly it's I like to I'll share with my husband, like, oh man, I had like a really good client today. They had such a good breakthrough, or, tell a friend. Or I think the sharing of the success is really the thing that makes it exciting for me. It's, it's nice to recognize it personally, but it's not as exciting when it's just me by myself having a party.
I absolutely love that. And no one's really brought up the sharing part yet out of all these podcasts that I've been doing. And, because celebrating is sharing. And yeah, good job, girl. That's a good answer. And it is so very true, because celebrating myself is like, okay, oh, good job, Kathi, you did such a great job. What does that even mean? It doesn't really mean anything. Of course, giving yourself a treat, allowing yourself to do a walk or a nice bike ride or something, giving yourself something. But I think actually expressing your gratitude for the good thing that happened and sharing it with someone is really the way to solidify that as a kicker.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to client success, I am come from the place where I'm really excited for the client, and it's like I celebrate them in those cases. I don't really get too much like, wow, Audrey, you really did it with that client. Like I'm kind of like, I always give the credit to them, because it's like I come with my tools, but honestly, I could come with all the tools in the world, and the person on the other side could do absolutely nothing and get absolutely nothing. So always huge credit to the people that do this work.
Yeah. And do you feel that your clients celebrate their successes?
Yeah. And I actually have a series of prompts that I give my clients to look at and to set and to see, to talk, write out. Some of them like to journal, some of them like to talk it out of like, what they're really proud of, what was difficult, but they did anyway. So I have a physical card that I will send to clients sometimes. I'll put it in emails. People like to be reminded of it. So again, it's just that practice. And this comes to the point, Kathi, too, of that rewiring is when your system is wired to look at what's wrong, right? That's survival wiring, because it's much better to be terrified of a stick that might be a stake because you stay alive than it is to be like, oh, that's not a big deal, right? So giving the body places to see safety and what's good is actually a really, really good thing that moves towards further rewiring that perfectionism kind of negative, looking for what's wrong and trying to mitigate things.
That's great. I can tell that you're an awesome coach, Audrey. So if you had to look back at if you had to tell your 18-year-old self something, what would you tell her after knowing that you've worked with so many people and with yourself?
Buckle up, girl. I would say buckle up, because it's going to be a wild ride. That's all I would have to say to her. I think she probably would know that, but I would just say, yeah, whatever you anticipate is going to happen, add like 50% to that. That's what we're doing.
There you go. There you go. Now, how did you step into being a coach? What did you do before this?
So I had about over 17 years in the yoga industry. So I was teaching yoga, managing yoga studios. I co-owned a yoga studio with a partner. So that was something that I spent a lot of my career in. And one of the things that I've always done, and I still do this, is I'm always looking to find ways to tie physical practices to practical everyday applications. So I was always in my yoga classes talking about like how we bring this, what this has to do with your actual life, because it's great to have a yoga practice, but if it's not integrating into like the rest of your life, then we're missing something, like I think that's really important to me. So one of my yoga students after a class one day said, "You should be a life coach." And I just laughed at her. I laughed at her because I had never heard of that phrase. But here I am, 11 p.m. at one night, Googling life coach. And I'm like, wow, actually, this is it. I think I'm going to do this. So I ended up getting my certification from iPEC, and rest is history.
I love that. I love that. And that was a client giving you permission to bloom, right? Blossom.
Yeah.
Giving that little, yeah. Don't you love that? I love that when people help you, guide you down the path. And, that's what we do as coaches or organizers or whatever. We're guiding them as well. But when we get the guidance from an outside person, it's really, really cool. So organizing. Talk to me about how you like it. What's your favorite way to stay organized? What do you use? Your tactic or your trick or your practice?
So I am a person that needs a combination of digital and also tactile. Like I've always been a writer. So writing is really important to me. I even have I've got my little notebook. So two tools that I would say I use a lot. One is my Google Calendar. Literally nothing would happen in my life if it wasn't for that. I take all the stuff that my brain wants to hold, I put it on the calendar. And I mean, anything, if I need to go, get my car inspected, if I need to go pick, like any little thing that actually takes time to do goes on the calendar. Like everything goes on the calendar.
I love it.
I love it. I had a paper planner for a while, but I'm like, honestly, it just ends up being on the digital calendar. So that tells me everything, where I need to be, what is happening, what I need to be thinking about. And then I do have, so I have this notebook. This is just called a Rocketbook. I realized that I was speaking of paper, we were talking about paper before, having lots of paper. I was somebody, because I'd be taking notes all the time, I had paper everywhere and I hated it. And it was very disorganized and it made me crazy. And so I ended up finding this product called the Rocketbook, which is essentially it's kind of like a whiteboard, but the texture is like paper and you use a pen. So then what I do is I can just erase it. Or what I do when I take client notes is everybody has their own little folders and I take a picture of it and it basically scans it in. So it gives me it helps my brain because I need to write down. Yeah, but then it has a digital format and then I just erase it and then it's no more paper. Kathi, I feel like you'd love that.
Woo, I love it. I love it. I love it.
Proud.
Yeah. You do me proud, girl. That's awesome. Yeah, because we do need to take notes. And especially as writers, writing is very, very important. But, not if you're going to end up being just piled with paper. It doesn't, then you got the equally stress factor happening in your life.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good job, girl. Okay. So what's the valuable free resource? I know you have something that you can offer the listeners here. What would you like to provide for them?
So I want to give people the Perfectionist Archetype Guide, because this will allow people to start to figure out, okay, if you can relate to this perfectionism concept, if you're starting to feel like, I don't know, this is hitting a little too close to home, you can check out the different archetypes that I pulled apart with all of these, the interviews and the research and the clients that I've had, and figure out, okay, where am I most identifying? Once you can kind of figure out where your starting point is, then you can start to figure out, okay, so what steps in the Fortitude and Flow process, where do I start? Where can I put most of my energy to start to, unwind some of these things. And that just gives people like some, again, we talked about that small and doable action steps, and it helps them understand themselves a little bit more in the context of, the work I do. So
I love that. Yeah. So if any of you have a sneaking suspicion that you might be falling under the perfectionism trap, go ahead and download the archetype. I'll definitely check it out. It sounds really interesting to see where I might fit, and also, I think we all have a little bit of it. Oh, there's your kitty cat. Okay, I'm seeing the tail. Woohoo! Love it. She had to come make a presence.
She did.
That's a cat for you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, listen, it's been amazing. Is there anything that I should have asked you that we haven't discussed, or anything that's on your mind that you really wanted to say during this cast?
I think the biggest thing that I want people to understand is like, you can't BS your biology, right? I think that we try sometimes really hard to convince ourselves that like, I'm fine, or convince ourselves that, hold on one second. The cat I see her making some bad decisions right now, and it's chaos.
Don't do it.
I know she's thinking about leaping off this desk onto a lamp. And so if chaos ensues, you'll all know what's happening. But let me see if I can finish my sentence and have my cat not destroy my desk. So I would just say, yes, you can't BS your biology, and people, oh, there it goes.
Oh, chaos, she did it.
Folks. She did. She jumped to the top of the lamp. The lamp tipped over, and there she went.
Wow. Well, your light didn't even change. I'm sure she's fine, because she's a cat.
Fine. She's a cat. Oh my gosh, Kathi.
So you're saying you can't BS your biology. That's what you're saying, right?
You can't BS your biology. Okay. The more we try to tell ourselves, I'm totally fine, no problem, I'm not angry, right? The more we do that, the more we are basically telling a fire alarm that there's no fire, when in fact the roof has just collapsed, right? So we have to start to get on board with, I am a human being, I do have limitations, I do have needs, I do need resources, right? All of these things that are very difficult to get on board with, but once you do, it's life-changing.
Yeah. Yay. I love this.
Thanks for being with me through the chaos, Kathi. That was just wild.
I think that's great.
That happened.
Well, I love the way you said she's going to make a bad decision. And I'm like, well, for who? Because you're sure she had a lot of fun doing the leap and land and bounce. It's like telling cats they're making a bad decision is just like silly, but I think that's
exactly.
I think that's great. Well, actually, it was a great decision because it gave us something to laugh at, and I wish I would have loved to have seen it actually, because you knew she was going to do that.
I could see the coil, the hind legs coiling. I'm like, oh, she's leaping. Here she goes.
It's like when cats climb up Christmas trees. It's like, I don't think so. And they're like, but this is the best thing ever. Wow. I had a cat climb up my Christmas tree, and it actually completely crashed. Like lights and everything. The cat was fine. One ornament was broken, and my life was shattered for about 15 minutes. I just sat, and it's like, oh, you got to be kidding me. But so that's why
it had to happen during the episode on perfectionism, Kathi. This is how we do a perfect podcast episode, chaos and all.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Thank you. That was a little gift from the universe for us. So there you have it, folks. Life's never perfect, and all you can do is laugh and just pivot, yes. Change course, and actually enjoy it.
That's it right there. You got
I love the fact that you were a yoga instructor, and then the integration, because I think the best yoga instructors or Pilates instructors that I've ever had talk about the mind body, talk about more than just the movement, what's really happening with you when you're in this process, and how do you continue that flow forward throughout the week?
Yes.
Because that's super important. So it's been a pleasure. I've had so much fun. Everybody, make sure you download that little test and see what kind of perfectionist you might be, if any. Maybe you're not any at all.
Maybe not at all.
Maybe someone in your life is, and you can just pass it on.
Exactly.
I'm sure we all know a few of those. Anyhow, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Guys, I'm signing off for the week, and I will see you next week, same time, same bat channel. And thank you, Audrey.
Thank you so much, Kathi. This is a joy.
Absolutely.
Hey, thanks for listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you want to hear more, feel free to subscribe on the platform of your choice. Also, if you feel so inclined, I would truly appreciate a good rating from you to me. Have a stellar day.